What's up, Raider Nation? It's Sean with Sin City Pigskin. The Raiders are set to have 24 contracts expire from players that were with us last year, 15 of which contribute significantly as far as playing time. Knowing which players to keep and which ones to let go is going to be key in helping build this roster without rebuilding it. As far as GMs, head coaches, Raider Nation has started over many times in the past 2 to 3 decades. We've gone through regime after regime, so I think it's going to be an interesting offseason. First off, I want to start off by talking about the guys who I consider to be part of the Raiders' identity, part of our core group of guys. Obviously, it will be first priority to re-sign those guys. Then I want to get into some of the free agents who contribute enough to where we would actually need to find someone to replace that production. And then lastly, I want to cover 2 players that I consider to be complete wild cards. So let's get right into it. Alright, so out of the 4 Raider free agents whom I consider to be part of our core of guys, part of the Raiders' identity, I want to start off with the guy who I consider to be the top priority in re-signing for the Raiders this offseason, and that's going to be Alec Ingold. Alec Ingold was an undrafted fullback for us, and I think he went beyond everybody's expectations. This is a guy who provides sparks for us. He gets tough yardage. He runs through tackles. He's just a tough, hard-nosed guy. Now, luckily for us, McDaniels does like to use fullbacks in his offense, and he's just so happened to have one fall in his lap who's able to catch passes out of the backfield. Alec Ingold is a really surprising athlete, which McDaniels has been able to see firsthand, as we all remember that hurdle that he had in New England. I'm sure McDaniels remembers that. Since he's undrafted and since he's a fullback, I don't expect Alec Ingold to demand a bunch of money this year in free agency. He was also injured most of last year, so I see him having a chip on his shoulder this year, coming off an injury and wanting to prove himself for the new coaching staff. I know we have new guys coming into town in McDaniels and Dave Ziegler, but I really will view this as a fumble on their end if we do not get this guy re-signed. The next free agent that the Raiders have to prioritize in re-signing this offseason is wide receiver Zay Jones. Zay Jones stepped up big for us last year when we needed him, when we lost Henry Ruggs. He became one of Carr's favorite targets last year. If you watch some of the mic'd up and sounds of the game content, you'll see Zay Jones on the sideline just being a great teammate.
You're doing a great job. You too. Your bald head looks good.
Barber in the backfield now. He has the football. He's got the end zone for the touchdown.
I block. I give great effort. I block for my teammates.
While he may not be a starter moving forward, I think that's fine for him. He's a good enough teammate where he just wants to contribute wherever he can. Zay Jones as a number 4 wide receiver or bench player, I think is a really dangerous thing. This is a guy who had a lot of potential and hype coming out of college. He's very athletically gifted. He actually ran a 4.4 at the combine. He might be one of the Raiders' best teammates, and he's another glue guy for us. I don't expect Zay Jones to demand a lot of money in free agency, which is another plus, so I think whatever contract deals we agree to with him will be a steal for us. I definitely want to get a new number 1 wide receiver. I don't see Zay Jones as a starter for the Raiders long term, but I definitely do see him remaining on the team and contributing whenever he does step on the field. You always see Zay Jones in those offseason clips of Derek Carr throwing in the park. Everybody that talks about him says he's an incredibly hard worker, and it honestly shows because it seems like he keeps getting better and better. He's a lot better than he was in Buffalo, and he's a lot better than he was last year with the Raiders. The third player in this group is going to be Johnathan Hankins. Johnathan Hankins has been a force in our run defense since he signed with the Raiders. This is one of the players in the NFL that requires 2 players to block him. If it's a run play, Johnathan Hankins is going to be getting double teamed. Obviously, every time he's getting double teamed, that's going to free up somebody else to be unblocked. We know that in New England they like to use these big defensive linemen like Vince Wilfork to just plug up the run game on early downs, and I'm hoping that McDaniels brings that same concept to Las Vegas. This is a guy like Ingold who plays a specialized position. He's just an interior D lineman for rushing downs. Of course, we love it if he gets sacks, but we're not trying to have him on the field for passing downs. Having said that, I don't think he's going to break the bank or require a large amount of money, so I think he's going to be a bit of a no-brainer to sign. While he may not be as much of a glue guy, he's a very key role player for us, and he has helped our rushing defense significantly. The last guy that I think we absolutely have to re-sign this offseason in free agency is Jalen Richard. We know McDaniels likes to use many running backs, so I think that's going to be perfect for him. Perhaps he can even develop further under McDaniels as a pass-catching running back. He has to be our longest tenured Raider outside of Derek Carr, and he's been making big plays for the Raiders since he got there. He actually scored a 75-yard touchdown run in his very first NFL game with us. But yeah, I think he works out perfectly for McDaniels' system as a guy who likes to use multiple running backs, and he's a contributor on special teams, so that's a helpful thing. He often shows up in big moments, like that 4th and 23, I think it was, that he was able to convert against the Chargers in Week 17 this year. Jalen Richard is another guy who's not going to command a bunch of money this offseason in free agency, so he's definitely someone that I don't want to see us move on from. So for this next group of guys that I want to see the Raiders re-sign this offseason, maybe they're not glue guys or the top priority in re-signing, but they contribute and produce enough for the team where we would actually need to replace their production with somebody else if they were to leave. The first guy and the most important one, in my opinion, on this list is going to be Nicholas Morrow. Now, Nicholas Morrow was undrafted by the Raiders in 2017, and I think right away he proved that he probably should have been drafted, but since the team made the move to Vegas, I think he's grown into a solid starter in the NFL. He's a really athletic and cerebral linebacker, and he gets a lot more takeaways than most of our linebackers, honestly. Now, of course, he was injured all of last year, so I know he's not fresh in our memory, but this is a key contributor for the Raiders. In fact, he was almost in the first group of players, but I just don't know which direction we're going to go with some of these linebackers while we have this new coaching staff. If I remember correctly, we almost lost him last year in free agency, so I know he is on other teams' radars. He's a homegrown Raider, albeit from 2 regimes ago when we had Jack Del Rio as our coach. We may not end up with him since he is good enough to, get poached away by some other team, but my hope is that since he missed time last year, that the market is a little bit cooled down on Nicholas Morrow. The next Raiders free agent in this list is going to be Quinton Jefferson. He's probably one of the better pass rushing interior D linemen that I remember having with the Raiders. Of course, he was only with us for 1 year, but he was a large factor in our front four being so successful in pressuring the quarterback this year. I can't remember the last time our defense had that much interior pressure on the quarterback, which is really key. So he was definitely a big hit for us. I don't know where his head's at. I don't know if he wants to remain in Vegas or if he wants to follow Gus Bradley. If we do allow him to leave in free agency, this will almost certainly be something we'll have to address in the draft this year. Either that or we'll have to re-sign Gerald McCoy, Solomon Thomas, Darius Philon, one or more of those guys. And that brings me to my next Raiders free agent that I want to talk about. That's going to be Darius Philon. Again, guys, we were very successful in pressuring the quarterback this year, and we were the lowest blitzing team by far. That's due large in part to Crosby and Ngakoue on the outside, but also Philon and Quinton Jefferson on the inside. Darius Philon made a big impact in his first year, just like Jefferson did. This dude hunts the quarterback from the inside. I think Justin Herbert's still having nightmares about him. We honestly had him this year super cheap. I don't know how, but he was making less than $1 million last year. I would be happy to pay him 3 or more. As I mentioned before, Quinton Jefferson and Darius Philon, these are the two I want to definitely get re-signed in this interior D lineman group. But out of Solomon Thomas, Gerald McCoy, and them two, we definitely can't lose all 4. We have to keep at least 2 of those guys. Either that or we'll be forced to address it in free agency or in the draft. Now, the next guy I want to talk about is going to be veteran linebacker KJ Wright. This is a guy who's made key plays throughout his career in big moments. He was there for the Seattle Super Bowl runs during the Legion of Boom. A guy who I noticed on the field last year for us almost instantly. This is a guy that we signed to our team very late in the year, and he had to kind of catch on, but he was able to make an impact almost immediately. He's great at open field tackling and making his reads, and I just always see him in the right spot. This is a savvy veteran who I don't want to see us lose. As I mentioned in my last video, I believe we're going to be moving on from Littleton and Nick Kwiatkowski, and we can't afford to lose more linebackers. In a perfect world, we don't lose Nicholas Morrow or KJ Wright. Maybe one of these younger guys can move up the depth chart as well, or we can draft a young linebacker this year. I think it's an important re-sign because he's a veteran in the locker room. He brings a winning pedigree to the Raiders in his experience from Seattle. But like I said before, something's got to give. We can't lose Littleton, Morrow, Nick Kwiatkowski, and KJ Wright. As for Casey Hayward, he actually had a great year for us last year. Out of all the people we've talked about in this video, he might be the one with the most leverage in free agency. And that's one of the reasons where I think he might be gone. But he might demand more money than we'll be willing to give him in free agency. If we let Casey Hayward go, we will only have one starting level corner on the outside in Trayvon Mullen, and we'll absolutely need to do something about that. I think we'll go after J.C. Jackson, hopefully, or some other big name corner, but at this point I can definitely see him leaving. All in all, those are the Raiders that I think we need to re-sign. That was 9 players out of the 24 free agents the Raiders have this year, and 9 out of the 15 guys who actually contribute and play significant time. None of these guys are really going to break the bank except for potentially Casey Hayward as the guy with the biggest name and the best season last year, and it's going to be more important now than ever to not overpay these guys and not give out these bad contracts like we were with Gruden. And it's going to be really key to see which guys Dave Ziegler considers to be our guys moving forward. So that's why I really think this free agency is going to be significant. We have a lot of players up in the air and a new GM and new head coach. So I'm really excited to see how that's going to go. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you disagree and think we should actually move on from some of these guys. If you liked this video at all, consider dropping a like. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. It really helps me a lot in the algorithm. Stay tuned for more off-season content as we get further and further into it. My next video is going to be about which free agents I think we should target in free agency from other teams. But that's going to be it for this one, Raider Nation. Stay tuned for the next one. I'll see you then.